Joe Anderson and Al Clopine of Pure Financial Advisors have the answers to your retirement plan. This is your money, your wealth.
Do you have an IRA, 401k, or any other retirement plan for that matter? Stick around, pay attention, because we're going to talk about strategies that is going to help you protect your nest egg from probably one of the biggest surprises that you could possibly imagine once you hit retirement. We have a great show lined up today. Joe Anderson here, Big Al Clopine. I'm president of Pure Financial Advisors. Hanging out, talking financial planning. A lot of things that you got to consider when it comes to retirement. One of the biggest surprises that you'll ever dream of that could take half of your retirement is taxes. Because if you take a look at the tax code today, we are already feeling the higher rates. More things are going to happen, so now is the time to protect yourself. That's what's on my mind today. So you know what? We get a lot of emails. We get a lot of questions. I want to dive in. This is a really important subject, so let's dive in right away. Let's go.
I'm 49 years old, and I'd like to know how much I should be putting in my Roth IRA every year so that I could retire comfortably around the age of 65.
All right, question. You're 49. You're asking how much money should you put into a Roth IRA each and every year so you have a comfortable retirement at age 65? I think everyone has that same question, but I'm really happy to see where your head's at when you're looking at maybe a Roth IRA, considering the tax implications of a Roth versus a standard IRA or a 401k. Here's the deal. If you want to really get in the logistics, it's $5,500 is the maximum amount that you can put into a Roth IRA, $5,500. Once you turn 50, then you can put another $1,000 into that overall plan. I don't know how much money that you want to maintain as a lifestyle, so I'm not sure if that's going to be enough money to save. But if you're looking at Roth planning, that's a good way to start. But let's dive into Roth planning because there's a lot of misconceptions about the Roth IRA, the Roth 401k, the Roth 403b, whatever. So let's dive in. Let's bring in the big man right now, Big Al Clopine, to help us out. So let's talk about Mr. Senator Roth. 1997 came up with a great plan. It was going to be called the American Dream IRA, Al.
Yeah.
And so when you look at Roth planning, tax-free income is pretty good to me.
Absolutely, no question. And really, when you're thinking about retirement, if you can create some of your income tax-free, you're going to be ahead of the game compared to others because we have a progressive tax system, which means the more money you make, the higher the tax rate. If some of your dollars can be tax-free, you stay out of those higher tax rates. So that's what we're going to focus on in this show, and there's many ways to get money into a Roth. Number one, Joe, as you mentioned, is a Roth IRA. You can contribute to a Roth IRA. That's at $5,500 per year or $6,500 if you're 50 and older. You've got to be working, though. You have to have earned income, and there are certain income limitations, so we'll get into that momentarily. But how about this? A lot of you guys have 401ks or 403bs that have Roth provisions that will allow you to make contributions into these plans, and that's more. That's $18,000 or $24,000 if you're 50 and older. So be aware of that, and you can do a Roth contribution as well as your 401k or 403b. And then finally, Roth conversion. This is the big one here. There's no income limitations, and you don't even have to be working to do a Roth conversion. So for a lot of you, this is going to be a great way to get a whole bunch of money to a Roth. And Joe, talk about exciting. I mean, really, when you're thinking about tax-free income in retirement, it doesn't get any better than that.
You know, if you take a look at retirees today, or people that are approaching retirement, saving for retirement, I think they have a phenomenal opportunity because if you look back at the Pension Protection Act of 2006, that allowed this Roth provision, if you will, into 401k plans, 403b plans, 457 plans. Maybe you have a thrift savings plan, TSP. So what that allows you to do is put an after-tax contribution in, and then all future growth is going to grow 100% tax-free, 100% tax-free. Now, when you look at a retirement income strategy, Al, people ignore taxes because I think for years people thought they would be in a lower tax bracket, and we're finding today that is just not the case for people that have saved.
Well, that's exactly right. So if you haven't saved that much, you don't have a problem. Don't worry about it.
Right, yeah. If you don't have any money, you're not going to be taxed.
but
you know what's crazy? I'm going to go off.
Oh, here we go. Off script.
Is that I just read something. It's crazy. The average balance, okay, of a 401k plan. Average balance of a 401k plan from someone 55 to 64.
Yes.
Take a guess.
I think I just saw it from Fidelity. It was what, like 79 or 90,000?
So it was $104,000.
Okay.
But 1/3 of people are not saving money.
Yeah, a third.
A third. So then they take, all right, well, you know, this is, so let's take the third out that is not saving any money, and then let's take a look at it, right? So that 104 was actually taking the third out. They add the third back in that is not saving. 55 to 64, the average balance is $14,000.
14?
14 grand.
Oh
so for those of you that have $14,000, you don't necessarily have to worry about taxes because you're not going to be taxed. But if you look at it, we see so many people that call into the show that ask us questions that have millions of dollars in their 401k plans. This is where you really have to make sure that you're doing the appropriate planning. If you haven't started to save, now the Roth planning is a perfect way to look at this because all of your growth is going to grow tax-free and you're not going to have to worry about taxes in retirement because what we're seeing, for those of you that have saved, that is one of your biggest expenses, and it's a surprise. It's like, wow, I had no idea I was going to pay this much in tax.
Well, that's exactly right. And the thing is, if you haven't saved, get started now. We talk about this on other shows. Get started at least a little bit, right? To make sure that maybe it's $100, $200, $300 a month, whatever it is, get started, and so you get this growth. But we want to focus on whether this should be in a regular 401k or a Roth 401k, a regular IRA, Roth IRA. Because Joe, I mean, what's the problem with a regular IRA?
I mean, there's good and bad with any type of strategy that you take a look at. So if I'm looking at a standard IRA, okay, or maybe a 401k, just a standard retirement account, you get the tax deduction going in. So that's great. So I put dollars into the overall plan. It reduces my taxable income, so that's less tax that I have to pay that year. That money is going to grow 100% tax deferred. I do not have to touch that money. But here's the problem, is that when you take the money out, then that is when you have to pay the piper. That's when you have to pay Uncle Sam. So when they established these plans, these retirement accounts, the defined contributions or the 401k accounts, that was under ERISA back in 1974. The top marginal rate back then was 70%, 70. It's almost half that today. So the trend, today's retirement planning is different than it was when your parents retired or when they were saving for retirement. You have to look at things differently because if you look at tax rates, we feel that they can only go up. So you want to make sure that you have some diversification in your overall strategy. Another problem with a standard retirement account, such as a 401k or an IRA, at 70.5, you have a required minimum distribution. It's a mandate by law. They don't want you to continue to defer those taxes any longer. So at 70.5, you have to pull those dollars out. It's going to be taxed at ordinary income. So as you continue to age, more and more of those dollars have to come out of the plan. If I look at a Roth IRA, there is no required distribution. You can continue to grow that money tax-free for your life, your spouse's life, and then guess what? For the kid's life. It's a phenomenal plan if you use it correctly. So you have to look at your tax return, you have to look at your goals, you have to look at what your retirement goals and aspirations are, and then how much assets that you have to decide what is going to be the best route for you. But there's a lot of problems with these standard retirement accounts because you're handcuffed. There's so many laws and regulations around these, and if you screw it up, you're going to pay a ton in taxes. Al, just show a quick example of the impact of a required distribution.
Yeah, and I think this is a surprise to a lot of people, and it's like we're seeing people that are in higher tax brackets in retirement than even while they're working, and let's show you how that could be, right? So here is a couple. They're making $100,000 net. So maybe they're making $140,000, but they've got 401ks or 403bs. So that comes off the salary, right? So they're only taxed on $100,000. So that's their current salary. There's no pension, there's no IRA while they're working. Total income of $100,000. $30,000 is the deductions. $70,000 is the taxable income. And for a married couple, that is the 15% tax bracket. But what happens when they retire? Okay, let's look at this. Salary's gone, no salary. But what about this? Social Security, pension, whatever that may be. Let's just say it's $70,000 in this example. So right off the bat, clients thinking, I'm going to be in a lower bracket because I was making $140,000 and now I'm only making $70,000. Well, realize if you're making $140,000, you're taxed on $100,000 because some of that went to 401k, 403b. Then what about this? You hit 70.5, you have to take a required minimum distribution. Here in this example, $60,000, total income of $130,000, you still have the $30,000 of deductions. Now your taxable income is $100,000. That's a 25% bracket. We see this over and over and over again. People end up in higher brackets in retirement than even while they're working.
Yeah, it's due to the required distribution. So if you have a lot of money sitting in retirement accounts, maybe you don't even need it, right? They're forced to take it out, and it's going to push you in a higher tax bracket. So now is the time to do the planning. Hey, we're just getting started. We got a lot more to go. Don't go anywhere. We got Matt Balderston. He's going to be hanging out with us when we get back from the break. We're going to talk to him about what's going on in the crazy world of the stock market. How should you diversify your portfolio? When it comes to diversification, there's different terms. Then I'm going to get back to tax diversification, and we can help you out from there. Don't go anywhere. Show is called Your Money, Your Wealth, and we'll be right back in just a second. To the show. Show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. Joe Anderson here, hanging out today, talking about retirement planning, talking about taxes, talking about the investments, because you got to protect it. That's why the show is called Your Money. Yeah, I couldn't help myself. Let's go to the true/false question.
Got a good one today. Since the S&P 500 did very well in 2014, 14% with reinvested dividends, I should shift my money to an S&P 500 fund because it's currently a hot investment. And we get this question all the time, and I'm going to say false for a number of reasons, but we have a special guest today that's really going to answer this more fully. And with that, I would like to introduce Matt Balderston. He's a CFP and was our first advisor with Pure Financial Advisors. Welcome, Matt.
All right, thanks, Al. Yeah, the answer is absolutely false. Chasing the hot trend, trying to buy something when it's high, putting all your eggs in one basket. I don't know how many cliches I can probably say to describe why that's such a bad idea.
Yeah, well, but that's what we all want to do, right? I mean, we want to buy last year's winner, and history tells us that that's not necessarily the best way to go.
Exactly. They even have a term for it. It's called recency bias. There's a lot of study that's done on why people do that. And I think this year it's going to be particularly dangerous because the S&P 500 was, one of the top asset classes of all of them, and it's the one we see every single night on the news, and people want to jump in on that. And that's, tracking bias is another one of those phrases you'll hear when you want to be in the index that you track most frequently.
So anyway, so the S&P 500 we know did well last year, and a well-diversified, globally diversified portfolio did not do as well. So people are questioning, is that really the best way to go?
Oh, exactly. I've heard that quite a few times. And ultimately, when you look at the total range of asset classes you can invest in, the S&P 500, like I said, was one of the best. Most things returned more around 0 to 4%. And when you start getting into the international markets, you're talking about -4, -6, depending on what index you're tracking. So when you take the average of all of them, yes, you ended up with 2 to 5%, depending on what your actual mix was. But that's very normal. In the last 25 years, about 8 of the 25, a balanced portfolio probably performed less than 5%. And yet on average, but on average, you're still going to see a 7 to 9% return over that period of time.
Over the long period of time. And I got this question probably a month ago, which is, well, it seems like international has not done so well the last several years. Domestic has, so why don't we just load up in domestic? Clearly it's a winner.
Oh, clearly. Well, if you actually go back and look over the last 20 years, the U.S. has beaten broad international indexes 10 times, and international has beaten the U.S. 10 times. It's a 50-50, so it's basically a coin flip. Sometimes you go through long stretches where 5 years in a row one beats the other, but a lot of times it'll alternate back and forth. The thing is, nobody knows, so why jump into something that's hot when next year could be the worst?
So what about this one, Matt, which is, well, okay, well, S&P 500 did well last year. Can't we predict what's going to do well this year?
Oh, yeah, that would be wonderful. I think we'd all be on our own private island somewhere if we could really do that instead of here. The S&P 500, just a great example because it has done well historically. And if people feel that it's the right place to be, you just have to go back to the year 2000 to find out why you don't jump into something like that. Because from 2000 to 2009, people have heard the term lost decade. That's because the S&P 500 actually lost 10% during that 10 years. It's about the only asset class that lost money, though. So it was only a lost decade for people that were only in that holding.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So this last decade, which if you kind of know about the stock market, S&P 500 actually went down over that 10-year period. In fact, $1 million investment would have ended up around $900,000, a little bit more in that 10-year period. Yet, what if you had a fully diversified, globally diversified portfolio? What would have been the return?
Depending on the mix that you had, I would say it's somewhere probably between 5.5 and 8. It really depends. I mean, more equities, more international exposure, small company stocks, all of which had really good, a really good tech aid. It's just the S&P 500, but again, that's what people see, so that's what people want to talk about.
Yeah, so I think it's well said. And if we could predict which would be the absolute winner, we'd know exactly what to invest in, but no one can really do that.
Here,
and
I got a prediction for you guys.
Yeah, let's,
I got a
what do you
prediction.
got, Joe?
I believe that the only thing that you can control is the things that you can control, such as taxes. My prediction is this: tax rates are going to go up. So if there was a stock called tax rate, that's the one I would buy because I know for sure it's going to go up.
Yeah, that's probably a pretty good bet.
Right.
So,
oh, sorry.
Well, when you guys are looking at diversification, which is such a key component of a true strategy when it comes to your retirement income, but let me dive in. Let me switch gears just a tad, because here's what the focus is on. What the focus is investments. I want you to take a step back before you get into the portfolio and take a look at how are those investments going to be taxed. Because if you're taking on a ton of risk and you're getting a lot of performance here, but you're losing half of it to taxation, what's it all worth? When you look at tax diversification, this is a key strategy that I want you to make sure that you pay attention to. Because there's really three different, that's an RMD. There's really three different pools of money that you can invest in, and they're all taxed differently. Okay? We have tax-free money, you have taxable money, and you have tax-deferred money. So when you look at tax deferment, this pool right here, this is where most of the assets are. $22 trillion at last count. $22 trillion. All of this is going to be subject to ordinary income tax, the highest of rates. So once you hit retirement, you got to start pulling money out of your tax-deferred accounts, such as your IRAs, your 401ks, your 403bs, your TSPs. The list goes on and on and on. When you start taking distributions here, guess what? You are taxed at the highest of rates. What we want you to focus in on is how you can control your taxes in retirement. I want you to start focusing at this pool here, a tax-free pool. What a tax-free pool is would be good old Senator Roth, a Roth IRA, a Roth 401k. Whatever retirement plan that you have, double check to make sure that you have the Roth provision in it, because now when you pull assets out of this account, you don't pay a dime in tax, zero tax. If you think tax rates are going to go up, this is going to be your hedge against higher taxes and higher inflation. I can't tell you how many of you that I see each and every week have 100% of your life savings basically sitting in these tax-deferred accounts. Now, we talked about once you turn 70 and a half, you are required by law to start taking money from this account, and that might pop you up into a higher tax bracket. You can control this if you do a little bit of planning. Start looking at making contributions up here. Okay? If you have a Roth provision in your 401k, you could put in $18,000 this year. 18 grand. It's huge. Before it was $5,500. You know, regular Roth IRA, if you have a 401k, you could put a lot more money up here. Don't go anywhere. Now, here's another strategy. You can start taking money from this account and moving it up to the Roth IRA. How about that for a concept? So now you can start bleeding some of the money out, moving it up into a tax-free environment so you can always have that tax-free income when you need it. Because here is the biggest thing. When are you the most vulnerable? Think about it. It's when you're retired. It's when you're retired. Wouldn't it be nice if you had a nest egg that you could pull from and not pay a dime in tax? It's a big thing. It's a huge thing. It's great planning. Just take a look at it, figure out what your goals are, and then look at the taxes before you dive into the investments. People chase returns. I can predict one thing. Tax rates will go up. I just don't know when. This is going to be your hedge against those higher taxes and higher inflation. We got to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Show's called Your Money and It's Your Wealth. Hey, welcome back to the program. Your Money, Your Wealth is what you're watching. Joe Anderson, Big Al Clopine hanging out. Oh, talking a lot about retirement planning. If you just joined us, we're going to get into a little bit more on tax-free planning. We had Matt Balderston just on. If you missed it, you're going to have to Google it. I'm going to tell you, it was pretty fantastic. Let's go to the true false, Big Al.
I can convert my pre-tax 401k to a Roth IRA while I'm still working. And the answer to that is sometimes. So that's kind of a vague answer. But in some cases, you can do this. So if your plan allows an in-service withdrawal, and many of them do at age 59 and a half, you can actually pull money out, convert it to a Roth IRA. Or in some cases, you can do it at a younger age, depending upon your plan. But a lot of plans have a Roth provision that allows you to actually convert inside the plan.
Yeah, that's a big thing. This law just came out a couple years ago that made it friendlier for you to do inter-plan conversions. So again, a lot of you probably have this Roth provision inside your 401k plan through your employer. If you do have a 401k plan, double check this. Because let's say if you can't take the money out of the plan, you can do an inter-plan conversion. So what you're doing is you're taking money from the regular 401k and then you're converting it into the Roth 401k. So there's provisions here that you can convert within the plan. There are no income limitations here. Another cool thing about the Roth 401k or Roth 403b or any other type of retirement plan through your employer is that the contribution limits are a lot higher. You could put $18,000 into the Roth 401k plan with no AGI limitations. It's a big deal. $24,000 if you're over 50. You can also contribute to the Roth 401k and a Roth IRA. So you can really start building up this tax-free pool for many, many years. And I'm telling you, no one's ever complained that they have money in a tax-free pool. And I don't think that you would complain if you had a lot of money there either. So you know what, hey, Al, we still got time. Let's do this. Let's dive into some emails. Let's go there.
All right, this is from Catherine, Point Loma. How can I tell if my 401k account is a Roth or a traditional?
Well, that's a great question. You got to take a look at the statement first. So it gets a little confusing now because these are fairly new accounts. So look at your statement. They will segregate it. They will say what the traditional amount is, and then also tell what the Roth component is. But I'm telling you, I'm begging you, go to your HR. If you do not have a Roth provision in your 401k, I would bring some of your coworkers, knock on the door to the president, and demand this Roth provision. Al, let's go to the next one.
The next one is, I inherited a Roth IRA from my dad. My accountant told me that I have to take a required minimum distribution, even though it's a Roth IRA. Is that true? This is from Phyllis.
Phyllis. Well, Al, you're the CPA of the group. Why don't you answer that?
I will answer that. So a Roth IRA, typically when it's your own Roth IRA, or if your spouse passes and you inherit your spouse's IRA, there is no required distribution. But when you inherit a Roth IRA, you do need to start taking a distribution, a required distribution, based upon your life expectancy. So if you're 20 years old and your life expectancy is to 80, you have to take out 1/60th of it. The reason why we have that law is our government does not want us to have this money in the Roth IRA growing tax-free century after century. So that's why we have this rule. So the answer is yes, you do have to take a required distribution.
Yeah, but you do not have a required minimum distribution in a Roth IRA as long as you're the owner of it. So if you are the owner of the Roth IRA, you can continue to grow that money tax-free for your life. However, when the non-spouse beneficiary receives that, okay, then they will have to take a required distribution. Here's another catch. If you do have a Roth provision in your 401k plan, if you have Roth, you have to take a required distribution at age 70 and a half if it's in the 401k. Here's a quick way around that. You just take it and you roll it into a Roth IRA when you retire, then that would avoid the required distribution. So I don't know who comes up with these laws. They're crazy. They're confusing. But I guess that's why we have a show. So thanks for tuning in. Next week, I think we have a guest.
We have another guest. We're going to talk about reverse mortgages and basically how to use the equity out of your home for retirement.
Wow, that sounds exciting. So stick around for that. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. For Big Al Clopine, I'm Joe Anderson, and you just watched another phenomenal episode of Your Money, Your Wealth. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.